Hey guys, in this week's Casually Criterion episode, we are going to review Robert Altman's The Player, spine number 812. But before that, we're also going to talk about Anyone But You and Inside Out. So join us.
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx, the show where we talk about the TV and movies we've been watching, as well as do a deep dive review of a current movie or a classic film from the Criterion Collection, as voted on by the listener via X/Twitter. This is one of those Criterion episodes which we like to call Casually Criterion episodes. The film that won our last listener poll was Robert Altman's The Player, spine number 812. My name is Justin, and with me as always is a man who's super excited, just chomping at the bit to see The Graduate Part 2. Mike, how are you doing?
Good. I actually, believe it or not, did have in my notes to bring up The Graduate 2.
So I've jumped the gun here.
Yeah, because honestly, it sounded great. I hope it gets made. I wish...
What is Julia Roberts and Bruce Willis doing anyways?
Exactly. Anyways, I wish we could have heard the entire pitch.
Oh, me too.
That's my biggest complaint I've got listed to talk about for The Player, and so I'm glad we got it out right away.
So we got it out now. Get out early. Now the rest is all positive.
Yeah.
But okay. Yeah, we can table that until we get to the actual discussion.
Sounds good.
Of The Player. But how are you doing?
I'm all right.
All right.
So, funny thing. People who actually listened to our Furiosa review, last week when we were recording, we got an interruption because my fiance knocked on the door and said that they had found a missing bird. We lost a bird 4 days before recording last week's episode.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it was very sad. We looked everywhere for it. Anyway, someone found it in the middle of recording last week. So Justin, being the expert editor that he is, stitched it together so that the audience did not hear that section of the recording. But I went back and listened to it, and man, oh man, did I seem very distracted for the second half of the Furiosa review.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, I get it. You had to... And it's not like we could pause, really. It was better to just finish, because I think it was about 10 minutes from the end of the episode.
No, it's like...
maybe...
I think it was like... ended up being like 25 minutes or so.
Oh.
But... for that 25 minutes, you hear a lot of me trailing off and losing my train of thought.
Whoops. Well, rescued pets, I think, is an admirable, totally fine, acceptable reason.
Yeah.
To lose your train of thought and to be
we
slightly
we should have
distracted.
added a little like, hey, here's what happened in the middle of recording, but we didn't think about it, so I'm going to explain it here in a completely different episode. Yeah. Why I was sounding that way.
Yeah, when I was editing, I did listen to that part of the audio though, and it's very sweet when it happens. I wanted to put it in somehow.
Where I discovered that the bird had been found.
Yeah, where your fiance, she opens the door and she's like, "Somebody found her. We've got her," or him.
Yeah, him.
And she's just very excited, and you're excited. It's very genuine and like a, just a really candid.
Well, it's a private moment, and I would appreciate it if you didn't listen to it.
I ultimately thought, well, I did. It's too late now, but I've listened to it. But I ultimately decided not to put it in the episode, but it is very sweet. It's a sweet moment that's been immortalized in digital recording.
Yeah. I like to think that you just saved that little section.
Maybe.
And just play it when you want to cheer up. Anyway.
Yeah.
Are we good? I think we've done the intro. We should get into news on the march.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, here we go.
News on the march!
All right, so we're here in News on the March. Mike, I'm going to pass to you for the first thing, because you've watched it most recently. We've both seen it. But go ahead and tell us what our first item is.
Our first item that we are going to discuss today is a romantic comedy called Anyone But You, starring Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney, released earlier this year in 2024, and I believe did pretty well, box office-wise, and seemingly reception-wise as well, right? I think it's mostly liked. I don't know.
I don't know. I've not talked to anybody who has positive feelings about it.
Yeah. Well, let me stop you there, because I
Right.
also do not have positive feelings about it. I did not like this movie at all. And that surprised me, because I like everyone in it. I like Glenn Powell. I like Sydney Sweeney. I like some of the side actors. I like romantic comedies. So I don't know what didn't work for me in this movie, but I did not like it. Almost nothing about it works. Like, I don't know. I mean, we can get into it in a little bit, but like, here's the thing. I like Glenn Powell. I like Sydney Sweeney. So when I say this, I'm not trying to throw shade on people that I know are talented and good at acting, but they are neither of them are very good in this movie. I think,
Correct.
especially Sydney Sweeney, which pains me to say, because I don't like being on that train, but I am. I don't think she gives a very good performance here. I don't think they have chemistry with each other, and they are not given a lot to work with script-wise. So I don't super blame them. So anyways, in short, that's what I thought about Anyone But You. I'm sorry if anyone listening liked it, but anyway, what do you think of it, Justin?
Well, you basically took all the words out of my mouth. I've been dwelling on the movie just because I don't know many people who've seen it. Like, I've just seen like kind of low letterbox ratings when I say I haven't talked to anybody who liked it.
Yeah.
The most positive thing anyone said to me was like that, it was decent, which
Right.
I wholeheartedly disagree with.
Well, I can see it being a hit because people have been starved for like a romantic comedy with like good looking movie stars.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I understand that urge.
Yeah. So I've been sitting on the movie for a long time. I watched it when it very first came out on streaming.
Okay, so actually,
even
hang
like
on.
right before it came out on Netflix.
53% Rotten Tomatoes critic rating, so I would say that's mixed, not necessarily all bad. I would say that's in the mixed range, and 87% audience score.
I find that bizarre.
But then again, though, the audience score for Rotten Tomatoes hasn't meant anything for a long time.
Yeah. That's totally fair. But I'm with you that like immediately when the movie started, I mean, 10 minutes in, like there was like okay, let me back up. I don't necessarily love like talking about movies in an overly negative way, or like bringing up a movie just to like crap on it. So like I don't really take pleasure in doing this because I like celebrating movies.
Yeah. I think we've established that. That's our brand, I think, for this show, right?
True, but if anyone's listening for the first time, like this is not the norm. But like 10 to 15 minutes into the movie, the complete like opposite of chemistry was so apparent between the two actors, and the awkward script and dialogue and like forced situations was so apparent that I was ready to turn it off, and I don't do that. I usually finish movies regardless, and I finished this one, but I don't always have that urge to just like I'm done. It was just so wrong from the word go, and like this like situations in it happen that feel forced by the script, and very little of it feels like it comes about naturally.
Yeah, I think literally every plot point feels like forced by the script.
Like even the story of the movie for people who haven't seen it is that these two meet. They go on they have like a great night together, and then it's been a while since I've seen it, but basically one of them like gets up and leaves earlier in the morning. The other one wakes up, Glenn Powell, he wakes up and she's gone. Then at some point she comes back, but she overhears him telling a friend that like he didn't care about her, because he's trying to be tough and like not admit his true emotions. And so then she goes, "Oh, well, he hated me." And that's like, it's so weird.
It's like such a contrived, stupid, like misunderstanding. 1 30-second conversation should like resolve the tension.
Yeah, and like and it's such a small misunderstanding that like the rest of the movie, when they're together constantly, like at any point, like it's such an easy conversation. Like it feels like the script just didn't want to do the work. Like it's almost like the script was like, well, this is how rom-coms work, so people will accept it without me having to try. But even like do you remember the scene where they're like looking out and they have to pretend to be, because throughout the rest of the movie they have to pretend to be together, right?
Yes, I know exactly what scene you're about to ask me about. Yeah,
and they start grabbing each other's butts, basically, and like they start putting their hands on each other's pants in a way that like nobody. People in relationships for years that wouldn't act that way. People in new relationships wouldn't act that way in front of other people. Like, it's just, I don't understand.
Yeah, so what you're describing is, like, throughout Act 2 of the movie, the whole thing is, like, they don't like each other, but they find themselves at the same wedding, and they each care about one of the people getting married, so they have to try and make a go and pretending like they don't hate each other, so that everyone else at the wedding will focus on the wedding and not them screwing everything up with their arguing and fighting and snide remarks and all that. Anyway, so instead of just hanging out next to each other silently or just like being next to each other and just talking, they have to make a big show about their affections. They're both grown adults acting like they're disgusted by each other, which is stupid because they're both good looking.
Yeah, and I don't believe that good looking people have never been in relationships, so they wouldn't understand like, well, how do I be affectionate? How do I show affection to another human being?
Right. They have to make a big show about it. Like they have to hang all over each other or do what they think couples do, which in the case that you're saying is stick your hand down the back of their pants and like poke their buttholes. I don't know. Like
it's literally, I think they make it like at one point it's implied that one of them puts a finger inside the other one as if like that's an appropriate PDA.
Right. As if like that would make everyone at the wedding look at them and be like, oh, they are hitting it off when they could do so much less to get that same outcome. That's the level we're operating on of like high comedy, like heightened reality.
But it's not really played that way by many. A couple of the supporting characters kind of seem aware of what they're doing.
Right.
But our two leads don't. And I think that's part of why the performances seem poor. Because I'm with you. I think both are extremely talented. And I left this movie questioning that for a bit until I kind of got the taste out of my mouth, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's worth noting, too, that this is a loose Shakespeare adaptation.
Which one is it adapting again?
Much Ado About Nothing.
Okay.
But they integrate some of the dialogue and it feels to me like to me the work of adapting Shakespeare is not done here. Right? If you look at other successful ones, like 10 Things I Hate About You, you wouldn't know it's a Shakespeare adaptation. And maybe you might not know that this one is, but like, I think the reason that things are so awkward is because they just kind of kept a lot of the same situations and not adapting them to a current time where people will act like, 2020 human beings.
Right. Well, I think part of it is to adapt Shakespeare and update it for modern sensibilities and still keep the same characters and dynamics between them. You also have to give the impression that you're smart and understand what you need to do to present it in a 2020s rom-com way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Immediately, it's so jarring, like how transparent every decision every character is making is, what's going to happen next. Like if you've seen a rom-com, you've seen this movie, I think.
Yeah, but a poor version of it worth noting, because I don't want to sound like we're crapping on the rom-com, because I love rom-coms.
You do.
There are rom-coms that I love that I guarantee you the majority of people who would listen to this podcast and who like movies in general think are bad movies.
Yeah.
And I love them. Like my wife and I just watched Mr. Deeds the other day and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I can understand that that's not a good movie, but really enjoyed it. I think the big one, Fever Pitch with Jimmy Fallon and Drew Barrymore, is a big favorite of mine.
I've never seen it.
A lot of people don't like it, but a lot of people don't like Jimmy Fallon, to be fair. But
I'm one of those people. But that's not the reason I've never seen it. I
feel like I have a low bar, and this movie didn't even manage to look like it tried to jump over it.
I'd say that's fair. I would say that your bar is certainly lower than mine for romantic comedies.
Mm-hmm.
But I still like romantic comedies as well. I think whenever they're good and whenever like the chemistry's just right, the script is just right, when everything's working, I really love that. I wish more romantic comedies would have the care. I think the reason we don't see romantic comedies now very often is because a lot of ones of the same quality as Anyone But You came out in a short time span and kind of drove the genre into the ground. As happens with most genres.
Yeah, that's probably true. I feel like even those, like the ones that came out from like the mid 2000s to like 2015,
Yeah.
ish, like that sort of decade, which I don't know if you have any specific examples. I'd be glad to hear them. But I'm willing to bet even some of those I really like personally, and are even those I think will probably look great compared to this one.
Oh, sure. I'm talking about like Katherine Heigl movies or like whatever Ashton Kutcher was doing. You remember that movie like Killers?
The Killers with Katherine Heigl and
yeah,
Ashton Kutcher?
Or it's like
I never saw it.
I'm talking about like the really studio-driven like bad ones. Now, you may like some of those.
Yeah, okay, I haven't seen those.
I'm not trying to throw all romantic comedies under the bus. There's still some stuff I like from that era. Like I think Crazy Stupid Love's mostly pretty good.
Yeah, that one's great. I don't know if you've seen Going the Distance with Justin Long and Drew Barrymore.
I have not.
I think that one's really great, actually. They meet, and then about a month into their relationship, they're really digging each other. One of them has to move across the country, so they try to do a long distance relationship thing. But it's got Jason Sudeikis and Charlie Day in supporting roles, kind of just before they kind of blew up. Or at least Jason Sudeikis.
Yeah, I remember that movie coming out.
Yeah, that's one I strongly recommend.
Yeah, so there we go. So all to say, we're not crapping on the genre. But anyone but you, I don't think it sounds like did not work for either of us. My fiance didn't like it either.
Yeah, my wife did not either, and it was her suggestion. Like she's the one who brought it up. I was like, let's watch this, and I was like, okay. And she toughed it out, thinking I was enjoying it, and I was like, well, I don't want to ruin it if she's enjoying it. And later on, we both were like, we were both like, we should have turned that off.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I'm saying I didn't like it at all and yada, yada, yada. I'm not saying it doesn't have any redeeming quality. Like, I think there is a movie there that a lot of people will like.
Sure. I mean,
I did not. But it does have a high audience score. So I think it is a crowd pleaser. I think with me, it's just when you've seen too many movies in a genre, you just get kind of jaded to a lot of it. And unfortunately, I'm too jaded to enjoy this movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I personally, I don't think it's any sort of issue of we've seen all of this too much, and it's like, because I don't even think it's well done.
No, you're right.
Inside of its tropes, like it's not like, oh, this is too cliche.
You're right, and I don't even want to sound like a snob saying that like I've seen too much and I know better.
Yeah.
That's not even what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to be sympathetic to the people who like this thing, because apparently they're out there.
Sure. Well, what was that? There was a movie that came out on Netflix, and I want to say it had like Jennifer Lopez in it recently, and it's already been forgotten. Yeah, I think so.
That one where she drives a big robot?
Sure. I don't know a thing about it, but I around that movie, because briefly it was like the #1 streaming movie in the world, and someone made the comment that a lot of the Netflix movies, like they seem really good for putting on in the background while you're doing laundry and like other things. And I could see if I were that type of person, which I'm not, to put this movie on in the background, do other things, come in and out, see the occasional funny thing in passing, and then later being like, well, okay.
Right.
That seemed okay. That seemed pretty good. And then give it a positive rating. But I think if you're sitting down watching this and paying attention,
there's better ways to spend your time. There are better rom-coms to be enjoyed.
Yeah.
Better Glenn Powell performances to be enjoyed, or Sydney Sweeney. Here's the thing, though.
Absolutely.
I think Sydney Sweeney's more at home being sad.
Yeah.
At least so far. Like, I know she's good. I've seen her be good, in multiple things. But I don't know that she's funny.
I'm not sure. Like, I'm curious to see her.
Me too.
Stretch
something else
like this, but it also feels like someone was like, well, don't play it funny, play it serious, and then like let it be funny while you're taking it seriously. It almost seems like that's what they told her, because like her performance felt very similar to like her performance in Euphoria, which is not like, it's very serious and funny. So like a lot of times the things she was doing were just like had such a dramatic tone that they felt like they're in the wrong movie.
Yeah,
and
totally.
That's what I think makes her performance feel off.
Yeah, and I think right now I'm just kind of really wanting some Sydney Sweeney redemption in my eyes. Like, I want to watch something where she's really good, because before this, the last thing I saw her in was Madam Web.
Oh yeah, I've heard that's bad. I haven't watched it though.
Yeah, it's It's worse than Anyone But You. But I don't
Interesting.
think that her performance sticks out as particularly bad because like I think everything in that movie is kind of bad.
Mm-hmm. You could go watch season 1 of The White Lotus. Do you want to see her be good?
I forgot she was in that.
I heard Immaculate is interesting. If
Yeah,
not,
I've also heard Reality is good, where she plays that reality winner.
I've not heard of this till just now.
Well, it's a true story. Basically, look up a person named Reality Winner and check it out because apparently that's quite good. Anyways,
I'm intrigued. Okay.
Yeah, so it sounds like we talked about Anyone But You, right?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
So moving on.
Next, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing we have on the docket is Inside Out. Inside Out 2's release is upon us.
Mm-hmm.
And you, I believe, just watched this for the first time recently, correct?
Yeah, I think about a week ago, maybe, week and a half.
Yeah, so what did you think on your first watch of Inside Out?
Yeah, so this is one that I've been wanting to watch for a really long time. So I think it was when I saw Furiosa, I saw the Inside Out 2 trailer, and I thought Inside Out 2 looked like it could be really good based on that trailer. And so that kind of gave me the kick in the behind to get around to watching Inside Out. And I don't know why I never watched this movie because I love the Pixar movies that are like this, that are, not so much the Cars and Incredibles, but more the Soul and WALL-E and Up sort of thing, I guess. Ones that seem to, target a little bit more of like the coming of age, more the human emotions and themes seem to be the point more than the plot. Even though they do have like a fun little plot, that's rarely what I connect with in these movies. So I always knew I was going to like Inside Out, right? I just kept putting it off. And now that I've seen it, I was correct. I did really like it. I thought it was pretty fantastic. It's, it's a fun little cute adventure with some great looking animation, in my opinion. I love what they do when they build these worlds, like the I don't remember what it's called, but the place they're in Soul, where the souls are all running around in the sort of like afterlife thing, and I like when they do that. Either. I think that they do that really, really well, and they made it like really, really fun. But on the flip side of this, like it's just such a great coming of age story with done it with a main character that I really admire and really feel for. And to me, this is up there with like top shelf Pixar, in my opinion. It moved me. It made me laugh. It made me cry. It made me, say visually awed in places at the animation, and made me nostalgic and think back to times when you're like grappling with growing up and the changing of your emotions and loss and all this stuff that I've said many times before. So I feel like I'm a broken record sometimes talking about Pixar movies, but just those the human condition and moving on and life going forward and growing up, like it makes me feel all those things, and those are my favorite Pixar movies. So this is up there for me. So yeah, I'm excited about Inside Out 2 now.
That was my next question. Are you going to be going to see Inside Out 2 in theaters?
I'm not sure. I know it comes out this weekend, but my wife and I are going out of town on a little weekend trip. So I don't know if I'll see it this weekend, but I assume it'll still be in theaters the following weekend, or maybe even during a weeknight. I'd love to, and I can cry in a theater in front of other people.
Yeah.
Maybe it's best to wait until it's been out for a bit, so that I'm not like in a packed theater and have people next to me.
Maybe that'd be the most satisfying time to cry.
Maybe. I cried in Barbie, and I saw it on one of the opening weekends, I think, and I was sitting like right next to like a man and his family, and he was clearly not there for Barbie. And so I felt a little, it's like, okay, he's probably judging me.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah, I don't mind. So Inside Out, you rewatched this, I guess? This is not your first time?
Correct. It was my second time seeing this movie. this was, to me, always like upper middle Pixar. Very solid. Better than most movies, even, you know?
Mm-hmm.
As far as Pixar movies go, though, it doesn't really like crack my like upper third of Pixar movies.
Yeah.
But it's good.
Mm-hmm.
I think with me, at the time that this movie came out, I was looking for something else from Pixar, I think. To me, this felt like someone sat down to make a Pixar-type movie.
Sure. I can understand.
You know what
that.
I mean? Like, it felt like made in a machine to be a Pixar movie. Like, you've got a big idea, and you've got, like, a coming of age, and you're checking off a bunch of boxes. Now, that said, I think I look on it more fondly now, having watched it a second time. And I think partly because I've kind of seen what Pixar's done since Inside Out. And I haven't loved anything from Pixar in a minute.
Yeah.
And so now when I look at Inside Out, I'm like, yeah, this might be like the last exceptional Pixar movie in my brain. And I'm really hoping Inside Out 2, you know, hits me just right and that I love it. I will say that upon second watch, it's still not in like, I think, like, you know, top third of Pixar movies. But like I said, I think upper middle is good considering Pixar's got a lot of really good movies.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of like looking through right now.
Yeah, what have they released since
list.
Inside Out? Or do you have that list upon you?
I do. It's a lot.
Okay, name some. Name some of the big ones.
Cars 3, Finding Dory, Coco.
Okay,
I really like.
Okay,
Coco.
never mind. Coco was the last exceptional one until you name a better one.
2.
Which one?
Incredibles 2.
That was a major disappointment in my eyes.
Yeah. Same. Toy Story 4. I actually never saw.
Just watched it again recently. I liked it better than I did in theaters, but I don't know. I don't know.
Lightyear would have been the other biggest one.
I feel like I'm one of the only people that saw that in theaters.
Yeah, I didn't see it. But they've got some smaller ones, like, and unfortunately there's some that went sort of straight to streaming or their run here.
Luca, right?
Yeah. So that's one. So Onward, which I guess did go to theaters, but
that was a weird time. It was like a simultaneous release or something.
It says March 6th is the release date on the poster here.
Uh-huh.
And I believe it was early to mid-March that COVID kicked in and quarantine started happening. So that one had an awkward, so I didn't see that till that went to streaming pretty quickly because of that, I think. But then in terms of straight to streaming, you have Onward, Soul, Luca, and Turning Red.
Okay. All right. So they have more hits than I thought.
I think are pretty good, but they don't feel it because of the being released straight to streaming and not really having much theatrical.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that. That Disney has sort of devalued their biggest IP with producing too much Disney Plus content. Like they've kind of devalued the MCU, kind of devalued Star Wars and Pixar a little bit with too much streaming content that should be, you know, ticket revenue in their eyes. So
sure, which is possibly fair, but it feels like they're going back to releases because after Turning Red, they've got Lightyear, Elemental, and now Inside Out 2. And those are all pretty big theatrical releases.
Yeah.
So they may be pivoting from that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna eat my words here a little bit. I think Coco, Turning Red, and Luca are all very good. In fact, I think I like all of them more than I like the first Inside Out.
Okay. I think that's very reasonable because I like all of those a lot. Like when I say Inside Out's top tier, it's like hanging out with those to me.
Right. And when I say Inside Out's like upper middle, that's because there's just so many exceptional movies, you know. But the thing is, like, I feel like I'm harder on Pixar movies when they don't hit for me, because they have the bar so high that whenever it doesn't reach that, I find myself being harder on them than I would a normal movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't necessarily like that. I'm trying to be conscious of that in my.
Sure. Well, they're like their first 10 films. I think Cars is the only one I didn't like.
Yeah.
And I didn't think was quite good.
Yeah.
Maybe even more than that. And then they kind of drifted. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a high bar. They tend to hit it for me or whatever. You know, I think
Mm-hmm.
I think they managed to take these like difficult concepts that that we have to deal with. Like if you're a thoughtful, somewhat philosophical person, I like that they're putting those ideas into these movies. And so like as long as they're doing that, even if it may not connect with me as much, like I try to like step outside myself sometimes and think of like if I was a kid, right? If I was like younger, and some of those emotions were coming around, and some of those thoughts, and like, you know, between puberty and loss and all, like Onward, I recognize is not necessarily their best, you know, like I'd say it's pretty comfortably like middle tier, but on like a personal level, that one spoke to such a specific thing for me that
Sure.
I was completely moved by it and like floored emotionally, just like it wrecked me.
Yeah.
And I think that I can recognize in a lot of the stuff that like that's it, there's going to be people that most of their movies do that too, right? I think other than things like Cars and Incredibles and stuff,
Right.
but all of their sort of like emotionally hitting ones feel like they should work for somebody, you know?
Yeah. And I would say the first Incredibles has an emotional heart to it.
Yeah. And First Incredibles is good.
Well, anyway, I think even Incredibles 2 probably has heart
Sure, yeah,
to
yeah.
it, but
Yeah,
whatever.
I just
There
think-
has to be something at the bottom, right?
Sure, yeah. But I mean, I just think you have kind of two types of Pixar movies, you know? And maybe Toy Story is like the one that bridges them both together, you know?
Maybe.
These ones that are very, very emotional, and then ones that are more action-y, I want to say, you know?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess
Oh,
I
well.
see it. I don't know if I necessarily agree with all of that, but I do know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Especially over the past, like later Pixar, you know, like after those first like 10 years or so, they started really kind of diving into emotions and, like you said, what makes us human, existential questions.
Yeah.
Things like
Existential,
that.
That's the word I've been searching for. That
Yeah.
I haven't been able to think.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think there's something to that. But I think even the movies that are more action-based for Pixar still try to have an element of, with The Incredibles, it's like appreciating your family and coming to realize that your youth slips away for a reason, for something else, to replace it with something, you become something else, you know, a different kind of hero. So I think there are things in even the most action-based ones. I can't really speak for the Cars movies because I don't watch them. I've only seen the
Yeah, I
first
haven't-
Cars.
Yeah, I haven't watched any since the first one.
But
But-
anyways, yeah, I'm glad you liked Inside Out. I hope you like Inside Out too. I hope that I also really like Inside Out too.
Yeah.
It's got really strong word of mouth, and that gives me hope.
Yeah. I think they're really clever with the way that, at least with like Inside Out, something that's so conceptual and like high concept. And I think you could say the same about Cars and like Toy Story too, but like when they take these sort of ideas, like the way that they play around with things,
Yeah.
I think is really fun. So like I'm super excited to see what they do.
The comedy they're
With
able
these
to
emotions.
mine by committing to like the gimmick, like the whatever the idea is, like this idea that your emotions are all competing for control of like driving you as a person, like you're a big robot.
Yeah.
And like the idea that like joy is trying to keep things together, but sadness just keeps creeping up, and anger will pop up and say something stupid, and it all works so well as like the metaphor and everything like that. What I will say though, watching it, just like taking the plot like from the literal point, which I know you're not supposed to do, and I know why this character behaves the way they do, because that's how emotions work. But the character of sadness infuriates me.
Yeah.
Like watching Inside Out, the character of sadness, can't stand her. She just keeps touching stuff. Just sit still, shut up, quit touching things. I know why she's doing it from like a plot perspective, because that's how emotions work, like I said. But
Yeah.
when watching it, I cannot stand sadness.
Sure. I think
she's just walking around touching stuff after she's told not to.
I know, but is that not the way that emotions work? Like, you can't. Like,
I just said I know that's what it is.
I know. I know you acknowledge that, but
that doesn't mean I can't be mad at the character.
Yeah, and you can be mad at emotions too. Like, you can be mad at yourself for like getting sad. Like, why are you getting sad right now? And so I think that's a fair reaction. So you're not wrong.
All right. Anyways,
it feels like bottling up. Like, you just like bottle up that sadness and just don't let it do anything.
Right.
And don't,
I know why it's happening.
Which is
yeah. You have to let your emotions balance themselves out in a healthy way, and sometimes they all need to drive and take over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they all have their uses.
Right.
And sadness is definitely one that, like, I think gets crapped on.
Yeah, and without sadness, there cannot be joy, or whatever. Anyways, Inside Out, good movie.
I agree.
All right.
Very good, but we can table it for now.
We should. Okay, so with that, I think it's time to head into our casually Criterion review for Robert Altman's The Player, spine number 812.
Yes, let's go.
All right.
From director Robert Altman comes a story of Hollywood.
I got a writer in here who's got a pitch I think you ought to hear. I think it's hot.
We open outside San Quentin.
The Graduate, Part 2. And Mrs. Robinson had a stroke, so she can't talk.
It's gonna be funny?
Yeah, it'll be funny.
Griffin Mill is a hotshot studio executive.
Yes. Angelica, Griffin Mill. Oh, hi. Good to see you. Malcolm McDowell.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Bert. Good to see you. How you doing?
He's heard every pitch.
That's exactly right. It's Out of Africa meets Pretty Woman.
He knows all the angles.
We're gonna have to have a little sex in this, Miss
Oh, yeah, sure, of course. We'll get it there.
Slowly pushes her panties down to her knees.
And all the players.
Where are the stars?
No stars.
No stars?
Bruce Willis.
I want Bruce Willis.
Not Bruce Willis. No Schwarzenegger.
Julia Roberts.
Now, he's about to star.
How did this get here?
They're coming from a writer.
Hello, is David Kahane there, please? This is Griffin Mill.
Oh, the dead man.
In his most unforgettable story yet.
Stop all the postcards. I don't write postcards! I write postcards!
This is a tough story. A tragedy.
Not unlike Ghost meets Manchurian Candidate.
The trouble is,
Something you have to know.
If you went to Pasadena with intent to kill, you could go to the gas chamber.
it's not a movie.
I'd like you to come down to the station.
I would hate to get the wrong person arrested.
Oh, please. This is Pasadena. We do not arrest the wrong person. That's L.A.
It's his life.
Are you seeing someone else? Oh, you took her to a party, Griffin, with several hundred of my best friends.
Do places like this really exist?
Only in the movies.
Robert Altman's The Player.
Can we talk about something other than Hollywood for a change?
Yes.
We're educated people.
All right, so as always with our Criterion films, we will not be doing the usual spoiler-free section we do up front for our newer films. We're going to jump straight into talking about The Player. We could spoil it from the word go, so consider this your warning, your spoiler alert. If you have not seen The Player and you don't want anything spoiled, pause the podcast now, go watch the movie, and then come back and finish listening.
All right, so The Player, spine number 812, was directed by Robert Altman. It stars Tim Robbins, Greta Scacchi, and Fred Ward, most importantly. The IMDb synopsis says, a Hollywood studio executive is being sent death threats by a writer whose script he rejected. But which one?
Yeah, because they reject lots, I've learned.
Yeah.
But I knew, but also learned.
Thousands upon thousands, according to his math.
Yeah. Oof. Cool. Well, I don't know if you want me to go first, because this was my choice on the poll. That's how we normally do it, but I also know this is your first time watching it, so if you'd rather go first.
I wouldn't say it's a rather. We can break tradition if you want, and I can go first. It just depends. What would you like to do, sir?
I think, if you don't mind, because I'm really curious your thoughts on this movie and how you feel about it, and maybe it's just because I already know how I feel, and you kind of already know how I feel.
Yeah,
about it.
I do know how you feel.
So, for me, it'd be more fun if you go first, because I don't really want to wait to find out what you think about it.
Okay. Sure. So, it has been a few years since I have watched a new, to me, Robert Altman movie.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when I was consuming a lot of movies and considered myself to be like quite a fan of certain Robert Altman movies. But I never ended up getting to this movie. So, all's to say, it's awesome to me that we are finally here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad, Justin, that you won this poll. Because you have been trying to get me to watch this movie for many years now, it feels like.
You and everyone I know who would give it the time of day. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Anyways, this movie was very interesting to me. It definitely went places that I did not expect it to go at all. More on that later. It was suspenseful. It was darkly funny most of the time in a lot of ways to me. It was cynically self-aware, and it has momentum. It moved. It's only like just over 2 hours, but it feels like much longer to me in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it's over, I felt like I went through a journey. Yeah, I'm still digesting it because it's only been a couple days, but I would not be surprised if this movie stands up there with like some of the best Altman that I've seen, like Three Women, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
I think I could easily see myself, considering it those movies as equal, if not maybe greater than some of them. In a lot of ways. So very enthusiastic. I begrudgingly say good recommend, Justin. But not that begrudgingly. I'm actually psyched that I liked it so much.
Yeah. Cool.
So
I'm glad you liked it too. I knew you would.
Yeah.
Deep down.
Yeah. No, I figured you as I was watching it, I was like, it makes sense why he would, ask me to watch this movie like 3 times a year.
Yeah.
So yeah, good stuff. I really liked it. Can't wait to get more into it. If I have to say anything critical about it, which I don't really want to, but it is a review, I will say that kind of like all of Robert Altman's movies, it's kind of ugly.
Kind of.
But also, I kind of like the deliberate style that Altman goes for visually, despite it not necessarily looking that great. It looks like a 90s movie. Let's put it that way. An early 90s movie. So it looks like what it is. So, but otherwise, just really good. Really, really over the moon about it. So, Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, so this is my second time seeing it, and it's been one that I've wanted to rewatch pretty much since the final line of the movie, which I think is maybe one of my all-time favorite final lines, or I guess 2 lines, final exchange of a movie. It's one of my favorites of all time, I think, now. But I was so pumped by the end of this movie that I've been wanting to rewatch it ever since. And I think I watched it like 4 or 5 years ago for the first time. And so I am also over the moon about it. I think it's really great. As you said, it's very self-aware. I enjoy that it's kind of a movie, we open with the literal slate and an action call, and by the end of the movie, it feels like a contrived movie, even though it doesn't start out that way. Like it definitely evolves over the course into its self-awareness more and more as it goes along, which I found really interesting. And and it does it so subtly sometimes that I don't think I even realized it until close to the end of the movie, how meta and self-aware this was, in some ways. I think even from the opening shot, which I think is roughly like 8 minutes, I think, at least for me, I felt really quickly that I was in the hands of like a great filmmaker and about to see a great film. So to me, it's a movie that just starts like I'm going to be a great movie. Settle in.
Yeah.
And
Buckle up.
It never does a thing to curb that feeling for me.
Yeah. Rarely any missteps, if any at all. Let me ask you, because you're kind of dancing around this. So you really liked this. I know what it is, but to anyone who's listening who doesn't know, which is probably everyone, what is your relationship with Robert Altman in general?
I've seen a handful of his movies. I think I've seen a decent amount. I've seen most of his big ones. Maybe the biggest one that I can think of that I haven't seen is Shortcuts. Yeah. But otherwise, I think I've seen most of his big ones. Like I've seen Nashville, which I'm a big fan of. Gosford Park, I remember liking quite a bit, although I don't remember that much about it.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that movie in a minute. Good movie.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that before I even knew who Robert Altman was. Yeah, so Nashville I really liked. I do not like MASH, but I would be willing to watch it again and give it a second chance. But MASH just did nothing for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. It also feels like it's such a film of its time.
Yeah.
That so much of it is lost on me now, and I just don't think I'm capable of appreciating it.
Sure.
But McCabe and Mrs. Miller is great. The Long Goodbye, great. To me, though, I've not loved any of his movies like I love The Player. I think it's just doing something totally different and totally unexpected for me compared to those other films. Maybe MASH.
Have you seen Three Women?
No, I have not. I don't know if that feels like one of his smaller ones, though.
I think so, but I think it would surprise you based on what you listed as the other ones that you've seen.
Yeah. I'm definitely curious about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just really love this movie. It's surprising. There are things that happen in it that are, as you said, you don't see coming. There's so many great inside Hollywood jokes. Like, there's part of me that does wonder if like people who aren't interested in movies or Hollywood at all a lot of this movie might go over their heads.
Yeah, it might be boring.
Yeah, but as someone with an interest in film and Hollywood and in that world, like even just scenes of listening. You said this earlier, like you wanted hearing more of the pitches. You wanted to continue listening to those.
Oh yeah, every time there was a pitch, I was hooked.
Yeah. So for like folks like us, it's I think it's really like speaking our language.
Yeah.
On a lot of that, and it's full of. The cast is incredible, right? Like, especially if you're including the
people playing themselves, yeah,
of like Hollywood people that we know, the big stars of the day. Like the amount of people in this movie is just insane.
Yeah, constantly surprising.
Yeah, even up to the last 5 minutes, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of times a blast from the past to be like, oh yes, I remember the '90s when all of these people were like A-listers and huge.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, for general thoughts, I'll leave it there so we can get into more specific discussion now, if you'd like.
Sure. I mean, you kind of brought this up earlier, but yeah, the opening shot, very famous. Or maybe that's just because you told me about it and that's how I knew to expect it. But yeah.
8 minutes.
Yeah, really cool opening shot.
Movie.
Yeah. And the best part of that 8 minutes is 1 minute and 45 seconds into it. I knew we were in good hands because that's when my boy Fred Ward comes out.
Fred Ward.
Yep.
And I know you love Tremors.
I love Tremors. I love Fred Ward in general. Every time he pops up in something, I'm always a little psyched. He shows up and he's already talking about Touch of Evil, the opening shot of Touch of Evil.
Yeah, it's already being self-referential.
Yeah. They are actually in that moment in an opening shot themselves. So the movie's already trying to be pretty meta and winky if you're into that kind of thing and you know what Touch of Evil is and why that opening shot's so famous and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Another thing right away that I think that you can't help but notice, just like the long shot, is a staple of Robert Altman's style, which is people talking over one another.
Yeah.
Being incredibly ballsy with his sound mix and in the mixing in his movies, making decisions that many others would like bend over backwards to not make. you know?
Sure, yeah. And not trying to jump ahead or take us away from the opening shot, because I think we need to stay here for a little bit longer. But the biggest example of what you're talking about to me was the scene with Burt Reynolds.
Oh, yeah. Where he's in the foreground and it just like zooms past him.
Yeah, but like we hear Burt Reynolds continuing to talk about, I think he's talking about how much he hates Tim Robbins' character.
Yeah, something like for a little bit.
For a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's talking about other stuff, and we hear that conversation while it's clear that Tim Robbins' character is having a conversation with the guy that he's sitting with, and we don't quite hear it.
Yeah.
That was like the biggest example that jumped out at me of like interesting sound mix choices and having two things going on at the same time.
It's happening all throughout. Even the opening shot, every time we follow somebody, we start hearing them up until we're about to start following someone else, and then we'll hear that person for like 1 or 2 seconds before they start filling the screen, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we never hear the end of anyone's conversation. It always just trails off and another one starts.
Yeah,
and
the camera just decides. The camera feels very organic in this opening shot too.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it's lingering until it almost feels like it gets bored and it's like, okay, let's see what else is going on.
It feels like you're that feather in Forrest Gump that's just flying around for a minute.
Yeah.
And then hanging out one place just long enough and then drifting somewhere else. Yeah, there's like this otherworldliness to the camera. Like it wants to show you everything. Like it's letting you know, like, we can't hang out here too long. That's not going to be what this movie is.
Yeah. I do love when Fred Ward comes back and he's talking about Rope.
Mm-hmm.
The Hitchcock movie that's famous for its long shots. But I do think there's a bit of a joke too that he talks about, like, I imagine he talks about Touch of Evil and Rope in terms of long shots. Those are the ones he knows, because anytime anyone mentions another one or like a more obscure movie, he's like, I never saw it.
Right.
And I think there's a bit of an inside joke there about like Hollywood people and people in the film world. It's like they've seen the big stuff, but like when they haven't dove into all this other cinema history, they're just like the big marquee stuff like Touch of Evil.
Yeah, they're not in it because they love the art.
Yeah. But yeah, so the pitches, that's like, I don't know. I almost wish we could sit through more pitches, but we do sit through a lot in this movie. But like this opening shot, I think flies by to me because of how good all of those pitch scenes are. They're so funny.
Yeah.
They're, I love that. I love that pretty much all of them are like, oh, it's funny. So like they'll pitch some idea, but then as soon as like Tim Robbins makes a suggestion I think most of the times he's like, is it funny? And they're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're just like telling him everything he wants to hear. So like these pitches just turn into some amalgamation of a studio exec idea and whatever they originally came with.
Yeah.
I think that's really funny.
And it's interesting later when he finally like is talking to another character and he's saying that one of the 4 things they look for in a movie pitch, he's like, a lot of them just don't have that stuff. And then it's funny to see like Richard E. Grant's character is like the hardened director that doesn't want to sell out, and it's really important to him that the integrity of no stars, no happy endings, and all that stuff. And then by the end, he's just a complete sellout.
Yeah. And in every pitch, I think every time anyone's talking about a potential project, they talk about Julia Roberts and Bruce Willis.
Mm-hmm.
They like name drop them, like, oh, someone like a Julia Roberts or a guy like maybe a Bruce Willis, if we can get him. And I love that at the end, his Richard Grant's movie stars Julia Roberts and Bruce Willis, and that they came in to do their cameos.
Yeah, and no one even has to like say it, like, oh, great, you got Julia Roberts or some lame thing like that. It's just in it. You recognize who it is, and it's funny. I think it's interesting. All of this, like all these cameos, all this like meta commentary on the Hollywood, industry in general. I think it's interesting whenever you see someone who works in the movie industry make a movie about the movie industry.
Mm-hmm.
Because it can be cynical in a way where a lot of times I feel like it's romanticized.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you could look at like La La Land from Damien Chazelle, which I think La La Land was his second or third movie?
I
want to say second,
I think.
Yeah, his second film, like his view of Hollywood. versus Altman, who I think at this point in his career he'd been out for a while after Popeye.
Yeah.
And then this was his comeback film. So he's been there. He's been in it. He has that cynicism, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think this is a man who, I think if you listen to Robert Altman talk, he's a pretty thoughtful guy. I think he fancies himself an artist.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has apprehensions about Hollywood in general, his place in it, all that stuff. I think it's actually quite interesting. And I guess back to this movie. So this movie, I think, quickly goes places I did not expect. I don't even think I knew what to expect. All I really knew about this movie was like Robert Altman did it, but when I first heard of this movie, I didn't even know who Robert Altman was.
Okay.
I think I knew the poster and artwork, which depicts Tim Robbins like in a suit hanging out next to a film reel, smiling.
Yeah.
So I always thought it was some like lighthearted Hollywood style comedy about movie sets or Hollywood stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In retrospect, I can see that the film reel looks very clearly like a film noose.
Yeah.
And the Criterion cover, I think, makes it look very, very obvious. But when I was a kid, the VHS, it looked like a fun comedy to me.
It does. Like it's bright colors and
and it's like kind of goofy. Like
Tim Robbins has sunglasses on, and it's like
right. Yeah, it looked like Michael J. Fox could have been in it or something.
Sure.
But since I've obviously known who Robert Altman is, and I sort of got a sense of the kinds of stories he was into based on the movies that I saw whenever I was going through my watching everything phase.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of had a sense that, like, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't be a comedy, but I just never thought about it. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Popeye really threw me off in Robert Altman's filmography, and I just thought that maybe later in his career he did more Hollywood studio-friendly pictures.
Yeah.
Turns out maybe Popeye may have been a rarity in his career.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, because I mean, maybe the other like most lighthearted thing I've seen of his is Prairie Home Companion, which was his last movie. Yeah. And that's just kind of a good time, like sort of pleasant celebration of the show that was a Prairie Home Companion. And
yeah.
It's not trying to be cynical or do anything crazy.
Right.
Just let actors have fun doing it.
Yeah.
So did you know that it was based on a novel, The Player?
I did not.
Okay. Yeah, so the writer of the novel is Michael Tolkien, who is he's like a writer in Hollywood and everything. So like I think some of that came from him, you know, at least like the core idea of like a movie executive being stalked by a writer and then killing the writer.
Yeah. Is the novel called The Player?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Notably, he wrote Deep Impact and a series that I think you like a lot called Escape at Dannemora.
Oh, yeah. Good series.
That you might want to know that. Yeah. You've spoken very highly of it.
Yeah, I think you'd dig it.
Yeah. So anyways, so some of that cynicism and the idea too comes from like other Hollywood people as well as Altman and everybody involved putting their own sort of touch on it.
Right.
But yeah, and in terms of the cast, the other person who to me like just owns this movie when they're in it is Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah. That was fun.
Yeah, it's such a fun performance from her, and it's very Whoopi Goldberg, but it just works, and it works despite how bizarre some of the cop stuff feels, you know, like their conversation about freaks.
Tampons?
It's very like, and the tampon thing, you know.
Yeah,
there's a long
scene.
She's like whirling that tampon while she's like asking him questions.
Yeah,
which I found really funny. And I know from watching, like I watched the documentary that was the special features on in the Criterion version of The Player,
mm-hmm.
and Robert Altman is sort of famous for improvising a lot and kind of being loose on set. And I think that scene feels like the most prime example of where it felt like they were rehearsing and working on the scene, and people had ideas, and he let him run with it.
Yeah,
because just like the whole tampon exchange feels very natural and off the cuff and not like overly written. Same with like the references to like freaks.
Right. But also, I think what's so cool about that scene is like, unlike a lot of improv, which I don't know always films super well, the improv had a purpose, right? Like that whole scene about tampons isn't about them talking about tampons. It's look at Tim Robbins' face and look what this conversation is doing to him and the stress level that he's at right now. So it's her playing a mind game with him, right? So it's like they could be talking about anything, as long as it's not about what he's there to talk about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because he wants to get in and out of there and get it over with. So
he wants to see why he's there.
Yeah, and see if you just delay and let him cook in that like wonder.
Yes, you could talk about freaks. You could talk about tampons. You could talk about anything. Just keep him on the hook and stressing out. And I loved to see like what Tim Robbins was doing with that. And what Whoopi Goldberg was doing in response to him doing that is just like a really fun scene.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's great. I love Lyle Lovett throughout the movie. But him in that movie too, like he's just catching flies, which is really interesting.
What did you think about Greta Scacchi? How did we agree to say her name?
Scacchi, yeah.
Scacchi, yeah.
Oh,
what did you think of her?
I think she's really good. You mean like from her performance or like character?
Both.
Performance, I think, is really good. I personally don't think there's a bad performance in this movie. I think everybody's pretty perfectly cast and top notch.
I would say though, her character feels a little different than everyone else, in my opinion, and I think this is on purpose. She seems so detached and bored. I think it's good what she's doing, but there's a certain otherness about her where, and I think I watched a video on YouTube with Robert Altman talking about this movie, and he said that he kind of wanted that character to like be such an outsider to the movie industry. Like she doesn't watch movies, she doesn't engage with movies, she doesn't think about movies.
Yeah. She's not constantly trying to sell something to someone else.
Right. And I think she does feel different. Like than everyone else that we meet in the movie who is in the industry, I think.
Yeah, which is that, and that could go some ways into explaining why Tim Robbins, which we keep calling him Tim Robbins, Griffin Mill, is so into her from the word go. Because I think he even asks her. I can't remember if it's in that first conversation where he's on the phone with her or when he actually comes to visit her in person. But he asks her about selling her art, and she's like, "Oh, I don't sell these."
Yeah,
and I think to him that's like, what?
What do you mean?
Why are you? Yeah, but it's like, why are you? What's the point of art if you're not trying to make money?
Right. Yeah, she's like this. I don't want to say something unattainable, but certainly her outlook on life is something unattainable to him and something he doesn't understand, and that might be the attraction. And also, I think at a certain point with his character in this movie, the worst thing that he could do is going to be the most attractive thing to him.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a certain point he reaches where the ugliness of the decision is part of the reason to make it. I think he gets addicted to that. I don't know. He certainly picks up momentum with it and starts seemingly looking for bad decisions to make, or quote unquote bad,
Yeah, like him bringing her to that very public event after sending his girlfriend to New York to handle one of the things, like going to try to make a deal in New York.
Yeah, doing something that wasn't her job.
Yeah. And even after she's like, "Is there someone else?" And he's like, "No." But then he just goes to this public event where there's going to be pictures and all kinds of stuff. of him with her.
Yeah, and people she knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was thinking about that during the movie. I was like, I mean, she's gonna find out about this. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Turns out he doesn't care. Well, okay, let's talk about her real quick. Bonnie.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me what this character is this character represents following the rules. This character represents moral good. She's honest.
Sure.
She starts at a certain level and's working her way up through the company, trying to do things the right way. But ultimately, we don't live in a world where that pays off.
No. Yeah, she's fired at the end, right?
Right. And I think that's very conscious, right? She represents people who follow the rules, people who do the right thing, who do it the right way, who are good people. Nice guys finish last, or don't finish at all in her case. They get fired. and badness and ugliness and greed prevails,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we start the movie with Griffin Mill, who is nervous about losing his job. He hasn't had a success in a while, and sort of the thing that starts him on his journey to success and redemption is murdering a writer.
Yeah, the wrong writer that he didn't even need to engage with.
Yeah, which shout out to Vincent D'Onofrio too, just killing it in that role. I think he's awesome.
Yeah,
too.
That dude commits to every role he's ever been in, and I don't know, he just loses himself in roles. I don't know how he does it, but he always has that ability, I think.
Yeah, I think if I hadn't noticed his name in the credits and was on the lookout for him, I don't know if I would have realized it was him.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah. He's really great. I mean, everybody's good on this, so it's kind of a moot point.
Mm-hmm.
But even Richard E. Grant, fantastic.
Yeah, Richard E. Grant's always I don't know, he's so over the top in everything, but always just the right amount of over the top.
Yeah. Yeah. His pitch is funny to me.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much every scene he's in is funny to me. I even like when he sells out at the end and he's like, it didn't test good, so we had to change it or whatever. And I don't know, you just realize the guy has no, I don't know, he's just full of it. He's just like everyone else. Anyway, so I watched this interview with Charlie Rose where he talks to Robert Altman. And Robert Altman said in that interview that casting is about 90% of his job. And if he does that job right, then directing is really quite easy. And I had always attributed that quote to Paul Thomas Anderson.
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah. But I guess it turns out Paul Thomas Anderson was just, quoting
just
Robert Altman, which I think is very obvious if you look at Paul Thomas Anderson's 90s movies like Boogie Nights and Magnolia. They're very Robert Altman-esque.
Yeah, and I think, wasn't he was kind of on standby because Altman was so old doing Prairie Home Companion.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I believe he was the standby to step in case Altman didn't make it.
Yeah.
Which is a very sensible thing to me.
So you said that this movie is about Hollywood, and it is, obviously. But I also think that it's about Hollywood because that's what Robert Altman knows. But I think you could replace Hollywood with any kind of business.
Oh, yeah.
And this movie would work just as well. I think it's not just a cynical movie about Hollywood. I think it's a cynical movie about, bad prevails. You know what I mean? Like, nice guys do finish last or not at all.
What it takes to get to the top of any world.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And how that behavior is rewarded.
Yeah. And the doc that's on the Criterion, the writer, Michael Tolkien, said that when they were trying to get the movie made, at some point an executive asked him to switch it to baseball. Because at the time, I think it took a long time to get the movie made because Hollywood did not want to do a Hollywood-based movie. They're like, nothing about Hollywood. We're not interested. So they'd asked him to change it to baseball at one point.
Now it seems like Hollywood loves doing movies about Hollywood.
Maybe it's the players' fault.
Yeah, maybe.
The players started.
Like, that turned out pretty good.
Yeah, put Altman back on the map.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to talk about anything else, like if you had any specific moments. Like I do think the other big thing for me is the ending that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Which I just kind of want to talk about it, like to just mainly say how awesome it was and how pumped I was when it ended. Like the Griffin Mill and what's her name? Goodman's daughter is her last name. June Goodman.
June.
Goodman's daughter. Griffin and June at the end, like delivering the exact same lines of dialogue as Bruce Willis and Julia Roberts in the movie. I didn't see it coming, and to me, like this is one of my all-time favorite endings, just because of its abruptness and its switch to that, and just that traffic is a bitch line is incredible to me.
It's a classic Hollywood ending, but in the context of this movie, when you're watching it, it leaves you with such like a hollow, ugly, empty feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That it kind of makes like the whole idea of a classic Hollywood ending be a bit of a turnoff. You're just like, ugh. You know, I don't know. It's just like, it's so
sure,
so
but it's
smart.
Funny.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's funny too.
Yeah, well, it's like
cynical.
It's that cynical, biting kind of humor that works.
Yeah, yeah, and I do love the whole drive home of like the writer, pitching the story of the movie to him.
Yeah,
and basically. It's a bit meta, but also it's just a cool moment of like that writer who's been stalking him, telling him he knows everything.
Yeah.
But
yeah, well,
he's
it's
successful
like,
and he doesn't care.
Yeah, it's like he's reached the point now where like nothing's gonna hurt him,
mm-hmm.
and so now I think he can just approach it in such a way that is so, I don't know. It's like he doesn't even care, right? He's like, you can guarantee me that ending, you got a deal, no matter what it is or whatever, you know, and then. Just goes about probably never thinking about his sins again, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, because I think the danger is gone at that point, because the whole reason he's being stalked by this writer is because he's ignored him for 5 to 6 months, right? So like now that he's giving him a deal, like this guy wanted to kill him, and had clearly, you know, he knows everything that happened, but now that he's got a deal. He's like, okay, not interested. We're going to work together. Well, then I'm not going to harm you in any way, even though I have all the ammunition.
Yeah. If you don't give me this deal, I'll go back to it. But, and sure. it's like, there's no hard feelings. Tim Robbins is like, yeah, okay, we got a deal.
Yeah.
It's like nothing personal. Everyone's just trying to be a player, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So even overlooking murder.
Yeah, everyone does.
Speaking of overlooking murder, he confesses to her.
Yeah.
When they're
he's like, I am responsible, and she's like, no, shut up.
Yeah, in the middle of sex. Yeah, she doesn't even want to hear it.
Yeah, and then I guess just didn't hear it or doesn't. I don't know. And then also when he's leaving the police station, and it's just like, yep, she thinks you got away with murder. We all do. And he's like, okay, see ya.
Yep.
And it's like everyone's cool working with this guy. No one cares. As long as money keeps flowing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, oh man, I laugh out loud at Bruce Willis coming in with, like, picking up that shotgun.
Yeah.
In, like, the fake movie. What's it called? Habeas Corpus?
I don't remember. Yeah. It's so stupid.
It's called.
It's like, it would make such a bad movie. Like, I like how you see Bonnie's reaction. She's, like, watching it, and then she, like, when the ending starts taking that direction, she's just like, what is happening?
Yeah. So who's all? You got Susan Sarandon and like Peter Falk in the background of that.
Yeah,
I just love that it's like no stars, and then you go in and even like
people who seemingly don't need to be stars are stars.
Yeah. It's really great.
Yeah, it is.
Man, I just love it.
Yeah,
and my wife is supposed to watch it with me because I've similar to you. I've been trying to get her to watch it again, and I've already told her that like I'm like, if you want to watch it tonight after we get done recording, I will gladly watch it again.
Yeah. If you want to listen to our episode, I think you should watch it. I'm just saying,
Yeah. Yeah, I doubt she listens to our podcast. She hears enough from me, I think, on a daily basis.
Yeah. She's like, I hear you recording in there. That's all I need to hear.
Yeah. I hear one side. But okay, anything else on the player?
No. Did not disappoint. Still turning it over in my brain. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Makes me want to watch like literally all the Robert Altman movies I haven't seen and just finish it out.
I think there's quite a bit if you really get
I know. I
into
think
it,
he directed a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of stuff, so I don't know.
We've seen. And yeah, I think he did Shortcuts after this one. So that may be the next one because I think that's the next biggest one for me.
It would have been like right after this one, I think, right?
Yeah,
93?
The player was 92. Yeah, Shortcuts 93.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So I think that Tim Robbins was initially approached to be in Shortcuts, and then they weren't able to get Shortcuts off the ground and needed to do the player first. And then he just kind of ended up being perfect for the player too.
Rock on. He certainly was.
Yeah. So this is something that I did not pick up on, and I don't know how anyone ever could unless they watched this movie like a million times.
Uh-huh.
But when I was watching the doc, the writer talks about who it was that was stalking Tim Robbins the whole time, because we don't get a definitive answer in the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
We just get the voice of him on the phone at the end.
Yeah.
It is, at least the person who's talking to him on the phone is the same writer who was giving the eulogy at the funeral of the guy he killed.
Ah, okay.
So and suppose that's intentional, that's the guy.
Uh-huh.
But how, and he even says this when in the interview, he's like, I don't know how anybody would ever pick up on this, and I don't know anyone's ever caught it. And it's very overlooked unless you're just crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's mostly because at that point it doesn't really matter who it is, because it's so late in the movie.
It does not matter at all.
But I'm glad to know it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think it's cool. I think it's cool to know.
Yeah.
Then maybe the mystery is better.
Maybe.
I'm not sure that it actually matters, but I thought that was really fun that they did that.
Yeah, that's cool. At least it is answered in case you had any lingering questions. Do we have anything else we want to say about the player?
I don't think so. I think I'm good.
Rock on. So now it is time to choose the next options for our Criterion poll for the 1980s, correct?
Yes.
All right, cool.
So we've been doing, for anyone who hasn't been paying attention, we've been doing films from each decade, starting with the 2020s and going backwards. So The Player was our 1990s film, and now we're each going to choose 2 films each that are obviously Criterion Collection from the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can vote in that poll. Go to X/Twitter @casualcinecast. That's where the poll exists. It's the only place the poll exists. So go follow us there and vote. And Mike, do you want to kick us off with your first choice?
I do. So I am going to choose a film from a director. Maybe you've heard of him, Robert Altman.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Yeah. And that movie is Secret Honor.
Okay.
Starring Philip Baker Hall.
I've always wanted to see this movie just as Philip Baker Hall.
Me too.
Is fantastic.
Yeah. Big Philip Baker Hall fan. And got to make good on that goal set to watch more Robert Altman movies.
Yeah, that's true. But man, now I feel like I'm letting you down by not having a Robert Altman movie.
I know.
Lined up.
Yeah, I know. You are letting me down. Anyway, so that's my first one. Secret Honor. Justin, what's your first one?
Okay. First one, I'm going to go with a movie that I've wanted to see for a while and never got around to. And its director of this film, I'm pretty hit or miss on. I've seen films of his that I couldn't stand, and I've seen films of his that I kind of love and I think are pretty great. But all of them have been interesting to to some degree, but I'm going to go with Mystery Train from Jim Jarmusch.
Oh, I was sure this was going to be a Terry Gilliam movie.
That I guess all of those things are kind of true for him. I have a couple as options here. We'll see if I pick one.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, Mystery Train. I've some people I talk to who aren't even like big film people. One of my friends he loves Mystery Train. It's one of his favorite movies, and he's always wanted me to watch it. And I never have, just because I'm always worried it's going to be a Jarmusch that I don't like. But this one's pretty well received, as far as I know.
Yeah. Awesome. Same. I have not seen this either. And I also find Jim Jarmusch challenging at times. And then at other times, I find him to be just what the doctor ordered. So I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. So what's your second choice?
Okay. So I'm going to choose a film that I have not seen by one Michael Mann. And that is Thief, starring James Caan.
Oh, good. I was thinking about picking this one.
Yeah, this has been a blind spot. As long as I have been into movies as a hobby consciously, this has been on my list of things to watch. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd really heard of this one until Criterion released it, to be honest, which surprised me because I was like a Michael Mann movie, and I've not really heard of this. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know what year Criterion released it, but it wasn't that long ago. It's relatively recent.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm excited about this one too.
Sweet. So that is my second choice. Justin, what is your second choice?
And so I was debating on doing two movies I haven't seen, but I think I got to go with my heart and go with a film that I'd just really like to watch again and discuss with you. So this is a film I have seen a couple of times and have really enjoyed. It's just a bizarre, quirky little movie by David Byrne of the Talking Heads called True Stories.
Sweet.
Have you seen this?
I have not, so I think that means a lot of movies that I have not seen as options.
Yeah, I think 4 for you by my count.
Yep. Can't go wrong no matter what wins. I love that.
Yeah. 3 for me, but True Stories is just a film that it was recommended to me by someone who loves it, and I watched it and just kind of struggled to attach to it, but it's one that always stayed in my mind, different elements of it, and as time went on, it grew and grew. I grew more fond of it, you know. So it's like parasitic in that way, just stayed in my brain, and I couldn't stop looking back on it. And yeah, I've since watched it again and really enjoyed the second watch. And it maybe has, I have the Criterion edition, and it has the most pleasant Criterion menu I've encountered.
Good.
I have to say.
I look forward to it. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Stars John Goodman, by the way.
Okay.
Which is fun. It's one of his earlier roles, I believe.
Rock on. Okay. To
yes.
recap.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I chose Secret Honor, Justin chose Mystery Train, and then I chose Thief, and then Justin chose True Stories. So,
yeah.
By the time you're listening to this, the poll will be live for a little bit longer, so go vote.
Yeah, go vote at Casual Cinecast on X/Twitter. Mike, if we're done, are we done?
We are.
Okay, well, thanks, Mike, for discussing The Player and other things with me. Thank you, listeners, so much for listening. As always, thanks Jake Wagner-Russell for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, go to soundcloud.com/bobscotch.
Okay, well, first of all, you're welcome. Second of all, thank you for listening, everyone who listened, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.